Hello, welcome back to another stream from Tachyon Lands. Today I'm going to be having a look at a number of our meta builds that we've seen over recent weeks. We're going to be having a bit of a summary, I guess, on a number of the builds that we've seen and going over them. And I've got another build to show you, and we'll do a little bit more testing and going through some other builds which have been suggested to be good over recent times. So we've seen with a number of my videos that we've got carrier battleships, which is this build in front of us, which have been pretty effective. They were effective against combating our torpedo cruisers with the Devastator torpedoes, which was this build here, the Devastator torpedoes and the missiles. And then we saw how this build was very good against the artillery battleships, which was this build. And then this build was very effective at combating the battleship carrier. So it's a bit of a chicken and the egg, one counters the other. All three builds are very powerful. So they're our strong designs that we've come across and I've tested pretty extensively over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I did watch a bit of Montu's video where he suggested the carrier battleship was probably one of the metas, and also the torpedo cruisers, and he's right to a certain extent. I would probably put the cruiser torpedoes with the Devastator torpedoes in front of the battleship with artillery, because this build here literally just destroys the artillery battleship. There's no competition. It will obliterate it. So perhaps a fleet of them working together, the cruiser torpedoes and the artillery battleships working together, because they're just utterly devastating, these cruisers against a battleship of that build. Now I've also got another build which we will have a look at, which everyone seems to overlook. We'll have a look at that in a little while. Let's just recap with this build. So he's got the Devastator torpedoes with the missiles. Now I've put the dark matter deflectors on here, and I've put some targeting computers on, a little bit of speed, just to change it up a little bit, because I wanted to test it against the battleships that the artillery battleships that Montu said were very good, and that was this build pretty much. And it's got the large crystal plating, the dark matter deflectors, auxiliary fire control. I've kept the artillery battleship computer on there. It's got all the artillery. The only thing I would say of this design is, because you've got the Tachyon lance, it's not going to go through the shields early in the battle, so it's going to be at a lot reduced damage output, because it's still trying to get through the shields. You've got your artillery, which will work those shields down, but will they work it down fast enough before the Devastator torpedoes on the cruiser can get through to the battleships? Let's find out. Here you can see I've got the cruisers, Devastator torpedoes, torpedo computer. Everything else is pretty standard stuff that I just showed you before. And we've got the this was the battleships which Montu showed in his video. So I just wanted to compare the two and see how they go against each other.
Hostile fleet assets engaged.
Tachyon Lancers firing, taking out about 5 cruisers straight up. Missiles firing from the cruisers. Cruisers are trying to close the distance. Battleships are running out of room now. They're going to have to turn around and fight. Devastator torpedoes will start making their presence felt. Yeah, dropping battleships now. You can see once they close their range, they're utterly devastating. Though they keep chasing after lone battleships. Let's just have a look at the damage there. Look at the Marauder missiles. Look how much damage they're doing. The whole the Devastators, because they keep chasing one lone ship, so they don't stay close to the other ships to do enough damage. Tachyon Lancers, kinetic artillery, yep, they're doing pretty good. But it's a combination of that Marauders and the Devastator torpedoes there. You can see there they won quite comfortably. That's just their retreated fleet came back into play. So we can see that the torpedo cruisers against that design which Montu showed are just utterly devastating. So I wouldn't say the artillery battleship is a meta. I'd say it's a very strong build, but it's not the meta. And I'm going to show you another build as to what is a better battleship build. Okay, so this time we've got battleship versus battleship. I've got the focused arc emitters, cloud lightning. We've got your dark matter deflectors, neutronium armor, shield capacitors to try and boost those shields up a bit, and along with line computers so that we can close the range and engage with our cloud lightning as well. On the other side, the battleships from the last battle. Montu's design was the standard kinetic artillery arc Tachyon Lancers with the large crystal forge plating. I'm not sure I would go with the crystal forge plating. I think armor is actually better. It doesn't really offer a lot anymore, crystal forge plating. Cheaper to build, but... And you've got the dark matter deflectors and the auxiliary fire control. Not sure I'd use this as well with this build. It can be pretty good with the artillery to make sure the chance to hit to increase. But yeah, it's pretty standard battleship design. So let's see how this plays out.
Hostile fleet assets engaged.
All the blue lasers and focused arc emitters firing. There's a cloud lightning firing. See the hull points are going down. Shields and armor going down. They've lost a few battleships. So have they. Pretty even. Okay, let's just pause here, see which side's doing the bigger damage. Look at those focused arc emitters, they are really hammering that hull. Cloud lightning is doing more damage than the Tachyon Lance to the hull. And then the Tachyon Lance kinetic artillery, yeah, to the armor. And because we're going straight through armor and shield, so we're not going to get stats in those figures. Chasing down the last few battleships, but look at it. Yeah, they all split up. One lone battleship. Yeah. So I was pretty decisive there to the arc emitter battleships with cloud lightning, and a lot of people won't use that design because it's been for some time now that arc emitters are no good. The people don't use arc emitters because I've always thought them not to be that effective, but I've been using them a lot in my multiplayer games. If you watch some of our live streams, you'll see using it very effectively against crisis fleets. They work extremely well, the battleships, the focused arc emitters and the cloud lightning. So against other fleets, it just seems to me like a no-brainer.
Alert, fleet unit offline.
You've got going straight through the shields, straight through the armor, damaging the hull. You can complement that, like if you just don't have battleships in your fleet, you're going to say combine this with torpedo cruisers. They're going straight through the shields, doing damage, and then you might have a bunch of other ships. They've got their missiles, and they're going through the shields and doing damage. And then you might have some corvettes and got disruptors, and they're going through the shields and armor. And so there's a whole lot of complementary weapons with a whole fleet design you can do if you want to do that. But I wanted to show here that the kinetic battleship, the standard mono hull build that people like to build, is not the go-to design for everything. Now, we've seen in my previous videos that the kinetic battleship is a very good counter to the carrier battleship. It's about the only counter we could get to really work. So we've got arc emitter battleships destroy kinetic artillery battleships. Torpedo cruisers destroy kinetic battleships. carrier battleships destroy torpedo cruisers, and artillery battleships destroy the carrier battleship. So it's a big circle. And the arc emitters may work against carriers. I don't really know. We could probably test that and find out. Okay, for this battle we've got our focused arc emitters with cloud lightning. Only thing I've added in is advanced shield hardeners instead of shield capacitors for this ship. That's because we're up against carriers, so try and make it a little bit more even, because they will go straight through the shields, and it'll also help protect against the arc emitter. This guy has got the triple advanced shield hardener on the carriers, because we've got the double marauder missiles here, which gives this fleet a bit of an advantage. So sometimes having the 2 medium slots instead of the large slot, because you get that third auxiliary slot, can be rather effective. So this should negate a lot of the damage from the arc emitter and cloud lightning. So let's see who wins.
Hostile fleet assets engaged.
Fighters are going in, strike craft. There's no PD defences, so they're going to rip into them. Missiles flying. Now the arc emitters and focused arc emitters are going in. Cloud lightning. It's pretty even so far, although the strike craft are going to hammer down this fleet. Yeah, the firepower difference is huge, 30k. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see the carriers losing this one. Focused arc emitters, advanced strike craft. It's getting a lot of damage to the hull there. Damage to armor. Damage to shields. Focused arc emitters. 40,000 from advanced strike craft. They're just doing a lot of damage to the hull. Those strike craft just getting through. Yeah, it is. Now the difference here, I think, is really that third shield
Alert.
hardener.
Fleet unit offline.
So, let's do a good test of the shield hardeners. I'll change the arc emitter battleship, add a third shield hardener in, and let's replay that same battle. Okay, for this fight we've got the arc emitter battleships again. This time I've got the 3 shield hardeners, and I've replaced 1 cloud lightning for 2 whirlwind missiles against the same carrier battleships as before. So similar loadout for the back end whirlwind missiles and the 3 shield hardeners. Let's see which side wins this fight and how much difference that shield hardener makes. Strike craft going in. Focused arc emitters. Seems their shields are holding up better this time. Got a bit closer fight. Carriers might still get there, although the damage has come down about the same, the firepower. Just dropped 10k. Dropped a lot. Gonna be close. Let's see the damage outputs. Focused arc emitters again, advanced strike craft, cloud lightning, advanced strike craft. Got the marauder missiles from both sides. It looks like the carriers got it again. You can just see how effective carrier battleships are. They're pretty effective against most builds. And the only real counter we've seen is those artillery battleships, which can counter the carrier. But then you see how the focused arc emitter battleships can beat the artillery battleships. So it's just those little nuances between the different builds. So I think the strongest builds in terms of allies, I still think it's torpedo cruisers and devastator torpedoes. I still think they're utterly devastating for their value, but probably what you want to have, just to summarize a lot of this, is if you're in the late game, you're probably going to have fleets of one type of ship. So if you have a fleet of carrier battleships, a fleet of artillery battleships, a fleet of arc emitter battleships, and a fleet of cruiser torpedoes with devastator torpedoes, that's going to be a hell of a fleet to combat. Or you might have fleets with all four of them mixed into it. So you could have a bunch of cruisers and then a bunch of those three types of battleships, which it's going to be impossible to counter that. I don't know if it's going to be a direct counter that could counter that. It's, yeah, let's have a look. So create new fleet. Let's put in devastator torpedoes. Let's stick in, say, let's give it a good 12. Then we've got arc emitter battleships. I'll stick in, what, say 5. I don't know how many, not sure how many we can fit in. Carrier battleships, 5. And we'll just use Montu's battleship, just say that, 5. Yeah, it's pretty much perfect. So we could say we dropped that to 4. We probably might add a few more cruisers, to be honest. So 18 cruisers, 12 battleships. And you can play around with these numbers if you want. But that's going to be pretty hard to combat, because these cruisers are going to go charging in, trying to fire off their devastator torpedoes. They're going to soak up a lot of damage. They're going to get targeted, while the battleships are raining hell down from long range. These guys are closing in with their strike craft. It's going to be really hard to combat that, because if someone's going like artillery battleships, all right, they might be effective against carrier battleships. These other battleships are going to be equal match to them. The arc artillery battleships are going to be a bit superior, and these guys are going to wreck them. They'll probably wipe them out just almost by themselves. So you can see that the different combinations are really, really powerful. And I would probably say that these 4 are probably the top. Probably the only thing I'd improve upon with this design, I'd probably prefer to go back to other design that we had previously, which was suggested by some of our commentators to some of my videos. Although that build, not that build. This build was very effective. This battleship build, the old arty battleship, or the standard battleship with the shield hardeners, that was very effective against the carriers, because their strike craft just couldn't penetrate the shields of the battleship fast enough, because this just made it a bit more resilient to those their penetrating weapons. While these guys ripped their shields down, and the Tachyon lancers obliterated their armor. So it was very, very, very effective. Okay, for this fight, I wanted to have a look at some of the smaller ships. So we're going to look at the corvettes. This corvette was from Montu's video as well, the missiles. The missiles, he was saying very good long-range artillery, particularly early in the game, which is correct. They will be effective early in the game. But later in the game, it's not. Corvettes are not really that effective. And I think a good counter to corvette spam, well, not only is it the carrier, we've seen the carrier battleship just obliterate 170 corvettes, no problem at all. Let's try all-out disruptors against the missile corvettes, and let's see how that turns out. see the numbers dropping here. These are the missile corvettes. These are the disruptor corvettes. You just see the numbers dropping. This is why I wanted to show this video, because missile corvettes are just not that good. Let's look at the damage here. Small phase disruptor, 36,000 versus, well, damage to hull, 72. Damage to armor, 72. Damage to shields, nothing. They're not doing any damage. Bang, gone. The missiles are just not very effective against corvettes with their high evasion, their speed. See, 90% evasion, it's just nuts. So you want the disruptor that has high accuracy, high tracking, shield penetration, armor penetration. So what is most likely happening is the disruptors are killing the other corvettes so fast that their missiles don't even get time to really hit, other than a couple, because they're going straight for the shields, straight for the armor, and because the hull points are so low, 240, they just die. They're just dead. Bang, gone. So disruptors, even if you say early in the game, it's pretty easy to get to level 2 disruptors really quickly in the game. You put level 2 disruptors on a lot of your corvettes and rush them into the fight, they are going to obliterate a lot of the other enemies' corvettes. The only thing that can really combat this would be high numbers of destroyers, and to be going a heavy destroyer build with probably a mix of plasma weapons and some kinetic weapons. Alright, let's try this build against another corvette build. Okay, for this fight, we've got our disruptor corvettes, same as last battle, and we've got our mixed corvette fleet. This one with gauze cannon, laser, and plasma. And we'll see how this build, both builds got the swarm computers, got the afterburners, we've got the double dragon scale armor, dark matter deflectors. This one's got the auxiliary fire control rather than the afterburners, so it could make a little bit of difference, but we'll just see how it goes. You can already see, just look at it going down. Ouch. Wow. That was quick. That was absolutely quick. So you've just seen here 2 battles. The disruptors just wreck other corvettes. It's just crazy. So if you're up against someone spamming corvettes, you've got 2 good counters: corvette disruptors and or carrier battleships if you've got that sort of tech level. But early on in the game, if someone's just spamming heaps of corvettes and coming up with missiles, and even this, you just saw gauze cannon, lasers, plasma, whatever, disruptors is going to wreck them because it just does so much damage to their hull, and corvettes not having much hull, and once you lose a bunch of ships in that opening few seconds, it's just gonna it's a cascade failure, if you like, because the numbers keep decreasing, the hull points keep decreasing across, I'm talking total hull points across the fleet, so it's just, and they're losing firepower, and it just collapses, just exponentially collapses. So yeah, you just saw it, bang, dead. So that's their retreated fleet. Poof, gone again. Look, barely lost any ships. Bang, a slaughter. So I would argue against Montu on that point, that artillery missiles are the best early. I would say missiles not that effective. I would say disruptors are far better, and we've seen in other builds in my whole across my videos that missiles are good. They are good. I do like missiles because they go straight through shields. They can hit the hull and our armor and start doing a lot of damage. The problem with putting in a lot of PD defenses, they work better than the flak from what we've tested, but they still don't kill enough missiles to really make it worth it. I would rather go all out offensive against the missiles, trying to destroy those ships, rather than load up with lots of defensive weaponry with PD and flak. We've seen across the board that it's not very effective strategy, and you just reach the point where your offensive firepower is so reduced that the missiles will just overwhelm you. So you're better off going offensive firepower, like with the disruptors, just going there, wipe the missiles out in like literally 10 seconds there, 170 corvettes gone, bang. See you later, war over, won. So yeah, I would probably caution against using all missile corvettes. They're just not that good. Maybe put in one slot of missiles and maybe 2 disruptors, or as long as you get 1 disruptor in there, they're still going to do a lot of damage. But mass disruptor corvettes, it's just a no-brainer. They're going to win nearly every time. The only thing you could possibly counter this, but you won't have this tech early enough, is most likely your shield hardener could slow that down a little bit, and your armor hardener, but you can't fit both on a corvette. It's one or the other. So I'd still go with disruptors. Disruptors will just, and it's not going to make a difference to that how fast they went down. They went down so quickly. The shield hardener, armor hardener will slow that and make it a bit more competitive, but it won't negate it completely. Okay, for this battle, I've got what we talked about earlier. I've got a fleet composition mixed. I've got the 18 Devastator cruiser torpedoes, the arc artillery battleships, focused arc emitters, just a standard battleship with artillery, and the carrier battleships. So I'll show you what their designs are. So the carrier battleships, which is pretty standard that we've seen in this video. Battleship, artillery battleships. We've got the shield hardeners in. We could put something else, I'm just leaving it. And the Cloud Lightning and Focused Arc Emitter battleships that we had before again. And then we've got our Devastator Torpedo cruisers. Now they're going up against the might of Montu's battleships. Now they might actually be alright in this, because I have got this optimized for I put shield hardeners in there, which is not going to help us in this battle, but we'll see how this goes. We'll see if the combination fleet can beat the artillery battleships. You can see that just dropping now. Those Devastator torpedoes just piled into. Oh god, they just vanished. They just absolutely vanished then. That's been boom. So that was once the cruisers got in and got a couple of Devastator torpedo volleys off, and the battleships closed in range and did all their secondary, all their primary and secondary batteries firing. Just vanished without a trace. That was pretty one-sided. Even though this fleet was optimized, I should have put in maybe shield capacitors. That would have been better against the artillery to boost the shields up. I'm not even trying to stack it against kinetic artillery. You'd probably put more armor against all that artillery. So we've seen there that this fleet design just easily wipes artillery battleships, no problem at all. So if you're up against someone who's throwing lots of artillery battleships at you, just include combination of fleets like you've seen there. You probably don't even need to do that broader combination, as long as you've got a good mix of torpedo cruisers in there, battleships. You're going to have a really strong chance of beating any enemy with that. That's probably where I disagree a little bit with Montu and some of his designs. Although he did say that he would include torpedo cruisers in any build that he does, which is correct. This is the right thing to do. But overall, I think artillery battleships, if you're going to go for that as the meta, I don't think that's correct, in my opinion. They are strong to counter carrier battleships. That's about it. There's lots of counters to artillery battleships that we've seen them throughout my videos. The Archimeda battleships here, they're very effective. Torpedo cruisers are very effective. The only thing that battleships are effective against is against the carriers. They just can do a lot of damage. But as we've seen across all of my videos, you can get an effective counter to nearly any design. And the Archimeda battleships, you can counter them too. The carrier battleships, I ran some other tests. Carrier battleships beat the focused Archimeda battleships. And it's just because of the nuances with the ships and the different builds. Just because they perform good against one type of ship in one battle doesn't mean they're good against another type of ship in another. So that's where having a combination of different weapons, different ship types, is really beneficial. You can see this, like if you had, with this fleet that I just put up there, let's say you're having a huge war late game, you've got 10 fleets like that, well balanced, it's going to be a very hard to counter that. Like, I'd like to see some comments and people's thoughts on how you could counter a fleet like that. If someone's throwing, a combination of strike craft, focused Archimedes, Tachyon lancers, missiles, the full range, cloud lightning, artillery, you've got everything, the missiles, the devastator torpedoes. How do you counter that? There's even a bit of flak in there in point defense. What's a good fleet that's going to counter that? Because I can't see how you could counter that easily. Would 120 frigates or something like that, would that be enough? I don't think so. I think that would get wasted very quickly. So let me know your thoughts and comments. I think the meta is still torpedo cruisers are very powerful. If you're going to build a ship in terms of alloys to firepower output against larger ships like battleships and stations and juggernauts and titans, you just can't beat torpedo cruisers. But to make them really effective, have those bigger battleships behind them, soaking up some of the damage and dishing out more firepower, so that people can't easily just counter the torpedo cruiser. And they've got a lot of shields, armor, and hull themselves, so they tend to get close in and can get their weapons off. So that's my thoughts on the current meta, or where it stands. I think I've shown multiple times now that artillery battleships are not the go-to for everything. They have their place, and they can be effective against a lot of things. Probably against the AI, probably going to beat them most of the times anyway. But if you want to be efficient, and you in your multiplayer games, you start throwing up different types of fleets like this, the other person's going to be racking their brain going, how do I beat this? How do I counter this? What can I do? I can't think of an easy counter for it off the top of my head. I'd have to do a lot of playtesting to try and work out how to beat that. So yeah, let me know your thoughts and comments. And if you like this video, hit that like button for me. And I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.